I'm Eric Bowling in for Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. Let's get straight to our top story. Donald Trump's highly anticipated immigration speech set to begin in Phoenix, Arizona, just 1 hour from now. Earlier today, Donald Trump made a last-minute trip and immigration issues. Now, naturally, Trump's proposed border wall was a central focus, but who would pay for it remained unclear.
Having a secure border is a sovereign right and mutually beneficial. We recognize and respect the right of either country to build a physical barrier or wall on any of its borders to stop the illegal movement of people, drugs, and weapons. We didn't discuss who pays for the wall. We didn't discuss.
But late today, Mexican President Peña Nieto said that he made it clear to Trump that Mexico will not pay for the wall. Joining us now with a preview from Phoenix of what is expected in Trump's speech tonight, Fox News chief political correspondent Carl Cameron. Carl, energized crowd, any bigger, any more energized than normal?
Well, sure, because this has been a day of tremendous attention. Trump's trip to Mexico City to meet with the president there has really brightened the spotlight on tonight's speech. And when you look at the preceding 3 weeks of the perception that he was wavering on a lot of his issues, the building of the wall, who's going to pay for it, how many of the illegal aliens in this country will be deported, how many will be allowed to stay with the path of legalization, they have to go back, what about those who choose not to do either, how will they be handled, and the ongoing question about what to do about visa overstays and securing the non-land borders, but preventing people from getting into the country, which is to say how to deal with what was once the ban on all Muslims, temporary, although it was, to what Mr. Trump now says would be extreme vetting and how that'll be defined. It's also true, Eric, that one of the questions that Trump raised was whether or not birthright citizenship should be done away with, what he referred to as anchor babies. So all of these things have brought a big crowd here and a tremendous amount of attention. And the Trump campaign was particularly pleased by the gambit they made in accepting the invitation from the Mexican president. The invitation came on Friday. The decision was made to go over the weekend. They announced it last night, raced down there this morning, and they were very pleased by how it went. Donald Trump got to stand next to a world leader, agree to disagree on some issues. They clearly have some differences, but both men appeared to be cordial. And it looked as though Trump had managed to make his first foreign trip as the Republican presidential nominee virtually unscathed. And then, having answered the question down in the news conference and said that, no, they didn't discuss who was going to pay for the wall, the Mexican president tweeted that actually at the very beginning of the meeting, as you point out, said that actually he said that the Mexicans would not pay for it. The Trump campaign has since issued a statement and said, look, this was not a negotiation. It would have been inappropriate to negotiate. It's not a surprise that these two sides, these two leaders, have differing views of some of the issues, and it's clear that they are very different. But it's definitely a bit of a cloud over the event today, and it's one that Democrats are likely to pound him on. John Podesta of the Clinton campaign said that not only did Trump choke, he got beat in the room and then lied about it when he said that they didn't discuss this. Right. So there's going to be some fallout, and now comes the speech.
Right. That's nice. Podesta did that, and Hillary Clinton gave him a little bit of a hard time earlier in the speech that she made. But I'll tell you, the bottom line is he somehow figured out a way to get this trip to Mexico in. He cut it pretty tight, didn't he?
Oh, sure. He's flying his own plane, of course. He has a house in Beverly Hills where he stayed last night. So what it was really a question of was getting a flight path approved and getting the Mexican president on such short notice to actually make good on the invitation. It's pretty obvious. It's pretty evident from the Mexican side of this that they didn't expect Trump to say, yeah, I'll be there on Tuesday or Wednesday in this case, having only made the invitation on Friday. The speech tonight is supposed to answer a lot of these questions on what Trump's immigration policies will be. It's also quite likely that he'll leave a lot of unanswered questions. Trump made it very clear in the early part of his candidacy that a lot of his policy utterances, his goals and priorities, are just that, goals and priorities. They're not promises or pledges necessarily. He described them as negotiating positions. And we all know he thinks he's a great deal maker, and politics is about deal making, and the relationship that he started today with the Mexican president was a big part of getting that started.
Carl, very quickly, just about a half a minute or so, the State Department today's pushed back saying Mr. Trump shouldn't make that trip. Why do you think they did that?
Well, it did look like what in White House parlance is referred to as a bilateral meeting of the leaders. You had the American flag next to the Mexican flag, two podiums. So Trump got the full treatment, very, very official looking. And obviously he's a candidate now, as is Hillary Clinton. And what they're promising are policy aspirations, not policy promises. And it sounded as though the White House and the Clinton campaign were basically pushing back and saying he got treated too well.
All right, Carl, we're going to leave it right there. Thank you very much. Now let's go to Santa Rosa Beach, Florida, where Governor Mike Huckabee is standing by. Now, Governor, listen to this soundbite from the Trump campaign manager Kellyanne Conway on the factor last night. Listen.
You'll hear a consistent Donald Trump in this way. No amnesty, no legalization, no sanctuary cities. Also, we want to be fair to the American worker. There are lots of folks feeling that they're competing directly with illegal immigrants as well as people abroad for these jobs now. And we also want to be, as he has said, when dealing with the 11 million or so, he wants to abide the law, enforce the law, which is a novel concept in Washington.
All right, so, Governor, given what went on today with President Peña Nieto, do you think that changes it all from last night, Kellyanne Conway outlining what she expected to hear tonight versus what may now be expected after the meeting with the Mexican president?
Not at all, Eric. In fact, I think Donald Trump scored an extraordinary coup today. He went to Mexico. He went to territory that is not friendly toward him. He didn't bow to the ruler of the other country like Barack Obama did when he went to Saudi Arabia. He didn't apologize like Obama did when he went to Egypt or when he toured Europe. He went, he maintained his positions. He didn't try to stick a finger in the eye of the president. He was a gracious guest, and the president of Mexico was a gracious host. They acted like diplomats. He acted like a president. But he never wavered in his position. And I think tonight what we're going to see is a reiteration of his basic premise. We're going to have a border. We're not going to have amnesty. We're going to end sanctuary cities. In other words, everything that is opposite of Hillary Clinton, who will expand sanctuary cities, won't control the border, will support amnesty. So the choice for the American people is clear. One big difference. Hillary Clinton traveled all over the world making deals for the Clinton Foundation to get contributions. Right. Donald Trump showed that he went down there and he didn't ask for a doggone thing. That's kind of refreshing.
Governor, I think it was a gutsy move. It was a big risk that he took this morning when I heard that he announced he's going to go down there. I thought, well, this could go very well for him or it could go very badly. But that's a sign of a leader. You take chances, I guess. Were you, as a supporter of Donald Trump, nervous about how this was going to turn out?
Not really, because I feel like Donald Trump has been underestimated as a person who's comfortable in his own skin, who has been in high-level, high-pressure meetings all his adult life. So this is not something that is totally foreign to him.
Nervous about protests or someone pushing back or any number of things that could have happened with that meeting?
Sure, it was absolutely walking on the higher wire, no net under him. I mean, let's face it, it was a gutsy and a bold thing to do. But look, I think that's what Americans want in a president, somebody who stands up for us no matter where in the world he is, and he doesn't change his message. He may say the message diplomatically and carefully, but he doesn't go change it. He doesn't go and pander. And that was refreshing. I thought it was a big day for Donald Trump, and I thought Hillary Clinton looked really small when she tried to be critical of him. And I thought the State Department was ridiculous in saying that he shouldn't have gone. Why not? And who are they to determine where the Republican nominee for president goes and who he talks to?
She's probably upset that he beat her to the punch. I mean, they were both invited to that, and he took the opportunity. She didn't. Governor, very quickly, about a minute or so, Donald Trump came out with 5 shared goals. He talked about ending illegal immigration, securing the border with a physical wall. I think that's going to resonate. Dismantling drug cartels, that's great also. But here's the one I think is going to create a little bit of a headache for you and for Donald Trump: improving NAFTA. Not getting rid of NAFTA, improving NAFTA. Does that mean he's okay with this free trade agreement?
Well, he's always said, Eric, that he's for free trade. And I think all of us who are even critical of the trade agreements.
And you and I both know, Governor, free trade agreements are the opposite of free trade.
Well, most free trade, we're getting taken to the cleaners, and that's what he's been against. Free trade has to be fair trade, or there's nothing free or fair about it. He's been very clear about that. He's not anti-trade. He's just anti-getting sucker punched by every country we enter into an agreement with.
So wouldn't that mean getting rid of NAFTA completely? Because there are a lot of people who say NAFTA, especially in states like Ohio, has driven jobs south of the border.
Part of the reason is because we don't enforce the same rules on both sides of our trade agreements. It's why TPP is such a disaster, whether it's environmental, whether it's labor law, whether it's the idea of, regulatory authority. Right. We don't have the same kind of issues. And the taxing issue is huge. Yep. And that, too, is another reason we've got to renegotiate the deals. All
right, Governor, we're going to leave it right there and say thank you very much. And the governor will be back with us live tonight at 11 p.m. for powerful reaction after the big immigration speech. But next on the rundown, would President Trump be able to deliver on the policies candidate Trump lays out in tonight's immigration speech? That debate, moments away. In the Impact segment tonight, would Donald Trump be able to achieve his immigration goals if he wins the White House? Early in the campaign, Bill O'Reilly pressed Trump on whether his proposals could actually happen.
I think you're right about the wall. I think you're wrong about the mass deportations and going into families. I think they have to be held accountable, and I think they have to be registered, and they have to go through the process. But I can't possibly see how the courts, the federal courts, are going to allow federal agents to kick doors in and drag people out, especially when their kids are American citizens. Last word.
I don't believe it'll be done that way. It'll be done in a very humane way, and they'll come back in, and they'll be legal, and people will be happy, and we'll have a country again.
But more than a year after that exchange, will Trump show a change of heart on mass deportations in his speech tonight? Joining us now to analyze from Washington, Alfonso Aguilar, president of the Latino Partnership for Conservative Principles, and with us in studio, Michael Wilds, an immigration attorney. Mr. Aguilar, let's talk about this. You think he can achieve the wall? I think he's outlined with President Peña Nieto, but also the mass deportations. I think a lot of people are waiting to hear what he has to say about the 11 or 12 million illegals here. What does he do with them?
Well, let me first address the wall. First of all, there's already legislation, the Secure Fence Act, which ironically Hillary Clinton voted for. She says she wants to build bridges, not walls. Well, she voted for a bill that calls for the building of not one wall, but two walls. So she's being hypocritical about that. In terms of the undocumented, from the very beginning, he said he would allow people to go back to their home country, and then the good people, those without criminal record, would be able to come back quickly. The question is if in his speech he's going to open himself to the idea of allowing those people, instead of having to go back to their home country, to actually touch back, if you will, in an embassy or consulate within the United States, regularized within the United States. So it would be a slight adjustment from what he has said before. Sure. It's a changing tone, but not a major flip-flop, as some people are trying to say.
Let's bring in Michael Wilds. Do you agree with the wall, that the wall physical barrier wall can be built?
First, thank you for having me. For transparency's sake, I've acted on behalf of Donald Trump's Trump Models and the Miss Universe organization. I'm an avid supporter of Secretary Clinton. Look, I think a lot of what Mr. Trump is trying to accomplish, truthfully...
You're on both sides of the wall.
Yeah, but I'm transparent.
Okay, go ahead. So the wall.
Unrealistic, un-American, unpopular. Unrealistic to think that we can take that terrain and put that money and resource into it. That there's going to be a touchback. We have mechanisms in the law.
That's the deportation.
Let's deal
with this for a little bit.
We have mechanisms right now in the law, Eric, that would allow people to touch back. People do not have the same rights at American embassies. We don't want to overwhelm consulates and embassies, and it's not practical. We're supposed to be building bridges, not walls, and we should be looking for ways to find greater business opportunities.
So you're saying that you cannot document 12 million undocumented?
There aren't enough handcuffs, airplanes, beds to remove them.
I want to get to Mr. Aguilar in one second, but I have to let our audience understand something. Under Obama, there's been 3 million deportations, but the vast majority of them aren't physically people in the country forced to leave and come back in. They're stopped at the border. So if that's a deportation, why couldn't Donald Trump's version or Mr. Aguilar's version of a deportation be you get to an embassy, you fill out the paperwork, you've been deported?
A hallmark of immigration policy and law, and I'm a professor on this, and a second-generation immigration lawyer, is simply family reunification and the spiriting of our economy through our immigrants. You're not going to break up families, have Americans deport neighbors, and then unfuel and kill an economy that's righting itself finally. Immigration is one of the most useful tools we have, and we have to get this right.
Mr. Aguilar, what about this? What about, I don't know, maybe doubling or tripling our legal immigration system? Right now we take in about 1 million, make it 2 or 3 million.
No, look, I think the problem that we have is that we have a system that doesn't recognize that from time to time we need foreign workers. So we should allow, if an American company cannot find American workers, they should be able to bring in the foreign workers that they may need. But the Democrats historically have opposed that. But at this point, nobody's really talking about that. We're talking really about the undocumented. But to be fair to Mr. Trump, he's already said that he doesn't want to deport every single undocumented immigrant. He's saying we're going to deport those with criminal records. Those who have no criminal record will stay here.
Very
so
quick,
we're going to have to wait.
Response, and I got to go. Go ahead.
There are about 5,000 ICE agents, about 300 immigration judges. 11 million people has been bantered about for at least a decade. Assuming there's about 15 million people and not enough resource to remove them.
President Obama got 3 million.
And it's not within the hospitality mantra of our founding fathers. We have to come up with proper solutions.
Michael and Steve, thank you very much. I'll leave right there. Up next, the potential political fallout, not the policy, but the political fallout from Donald Trump's immigration speech tonight, with 2 top experts weighing in right after this. In the Unresolved Problems segment tonight, the political impact of Donald Trump's immigration proposals. Former Mexican President Vicente Fox, one of Trump's fiercest critics, has long played politics about a potential visit by the Republican nominee to Mexico.
He is not welcome to Mexico by 130 million people. We don't like him. We don't want him. We reject his visit. Trump is using Mexico, is using President Peña to boost his sinking poll numbers.
I think it's very important to invite Donald Trump to come to Mexico and to learn about the real Mexico that is, I would think, totally different.
But now that Trump has made the trip to Mexico, will this provide a big political boost to Trump's message on immigration? Joining us now with reaction from Washington, Fox News contributor Mercedes Schlapp, and here in studio, political consultant Michael Tobin. So the political fallout. He left that meeting, he hit the podium, he looked very presidential. I got to think that's going to help him politically, right? Poll numbers should firm up.
No, absolutely. I'm not a Trump supporter, but I don't think there's any real policy substance or discussion to be had about this. I think it's all politics, and the politics have really been quite brilliant. He looked presidential. He looked august and appropriate, standing there on the podium next to a world leader, discussing what I think is an unworkable, untenable, and hateful policy suggestion and political suggestion.
Which one? Which part of
the wall? The wall.
The wall is hateful?
I believe it is hateful, and I believe it's an impractical.
Why is it hateful? You know, you can make the case for impractical, but right. Where's the hate in the wall?
I believe it was a sound political judgment to suggest it to get through Republican presidential primaries, but as a policy.
Where's the hate part of it?
The hate is we're talking about the other, we're talking about crime, and I believe it was a vicious code word. All that being said, it was good politics today, and it did elevate.
Mercedes, the politics, the fallout. I mean, he's polling around 20%. I think the last Fox News poll ballpark was about 20% favorability with Hispanics. Do you think it goes up from there?
You know, I think it opens the door with the possibility of more outreach towards the Hispanic community. I think one of the more positive messages that Donald Trump can focus on is on what immigrants who have come to this nation, what they have contributed to making America great. There's so many of these immigrant stories. My father's story, my parents' story, and are just one of them. And I'd like to say that, you know, I think that what Donald Trump did today, going to Mexico, it really showed a very decisive and presidential moment. It was a point there where actually you're starting to see the fact that he is reaching out. It's a mutual respect, wanting to listen, having this dialogue with a foreign leader, with our neighbor. And I think that was a very constructive dialogue that occurred.
So, don't you think he beat Hillary Clinton to the punch? They were both invited. Donald Trump got on a plane and somehow squeezed the meeting in. We had a big policy speech tonight coming out. That sounds like a fairly presidential move, no?
Oh, I think it was very savvy, and I think the poll numbers will show that it was also effective. And I disagree with the State Department and the White House saying, I wish they hadn't have done it, it shouldn't have happened. There is no incumbent that Trump is running against. It is an open seat in the White House, and Hillary was invited and could have attended. And let's remember, Barack Obama went to Europe in July of 2008 before his general election to speak, I believe it was at the Brandenburg Gate, and that was generally well received. So I think there is some hypocrisy that this candidate does something somewhat similar and is somehow held to a different threshold.
Mercedes, do you agree with this? Do you think it's a different threshold? Can you equate the two?
Well, I think that Donald Trump, he did this with in Louisiana as well. What are we looking at? We're looking at the fact that Hillary Clinton has spent weeks at Martha's Vineyards having these swanky fundraisers. Compare that to the fact that Donald Trump, he's with the people. He goes out to Louisiana to be with the flood victims. Then he goes out and meets with the Mexican president, despite all the criticism of people saying, oh, he's made comments about Mexicans. You know, it's been incredibly effective. And you really have to hand it to the campaign in really finding these opportunities where Donald Trump is speaking directly, not only to Hispanics, but to African Americans. I mean, this is something that we don't see very much with Republican leaders. They shy away from these, talking about, for example, inner cities or Hispanics. And I have to tell you, he's really appearing very much in this leadership role, which I think would work.
Mercedes, Michael, got to leave right there. Thank you very much. Coming up, the strategic consequences of Donald Trump's plan to secure the border. Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters is here to weigh in. Don't miss this. In the Factor follow-up segment tonight, Donald Trump's plan to secure the border. Constructing a great big wall lies at the center of Trump's plans, but can it deliver the safety and security Trump promises if it's built? Joining us now to analyze from Washington, Ralph Peters, Fox News strategic analyst and author of The Damned Petersburg. Okay, Colonel, we got a couple of topics. Let's start with this big, beautiful wall that's going to be built. You don't think it can be built? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it can be built. Whether it is wise to build a continuous wall for almost 2,000 miles across our southwestern border is another question. I have the misfortune of experience. I've actually worked down in the border when I was at the drug czar's office. I've been there, and walls work very well in populated areas. South of San Diego, Nogales, Arizona, walls there are beneficial. But do we really need to build a wall through the Big Bend National Park, an isolated area in Texas, through the Chiricahua Mountains in Arizona?
Yeah, you know why? You know why? Because if the wall's not contiguous, then you can walk to the open space and walk through, Colonel.
Well, yeah,
if it works in populated areas, it's got to go the full length. No,
it's a question of cost effectiveness, among other things, but also there are really strong practical considerations. I won't even bother you with the environmental considerations, but let's look at Texas. 1,254 miles of our border with Mexico are along the Rio Grande running through Texas. Now, where do you build that wall? On the Mexican side? No, that's an act of war. On our side and give the river to Mexico? Don't think so. Did you try to build a wall in the middle of the river? There are a lot of practical considerations that have to be taken into account. What I would argue for...
Can I throw something at you?
No, let me just get into this.
Can I throw something at you?
I want a partial wall, but above all, what Trump is right about is we need a wall of laws.
Wow, come on, Colonel, we need a wall also. Let me throw something at you. President Obama famously came into office and spent $1 trillion of our money on shovel-ready jobs that happened not to be shovel-ready and didn't create any jobs. What's wrong with this idea of a few $1 billion spent to keep our southern border secure?
Well, it would probably be, once you got the government-mandated union labor in there, all the materials, the various lawsuits, a lot of those patriots down on the border suddenly want enormous amounts of money for the use of their land.
I got a better idea for that, Colonel. Let's use Mexican and American laborers. We'll share the laborers, and that's a way to help defray some of the cost to Mexico, use some of their labor.
Well, it would probably wind up being built largely by illegal immigrants anyway. But Eric, I strongly believe, that what we need to do is first, as Mr. Trump has said, enforce the laws on the books, get the felons out of here. We need to revamp other laws, pass new ones. When you are apprehended at the border, it shouldn't be catch and release. You go back immediately. And what we've got to do is stop sympathizing with the criminals and penalizing the victims. So these ideas of endless appeals and anchor babies, sorry if that offends anybody, that stuff, that nonsense has to stop. We need legal immigration, but not illegal. And here's my bottom line. No one who enters this country illegally ever gets to vote for president, senator, representative, governor, judge, etc.
All right, Colonel Peters, we're going to leave there. I had another topic to get to, is ISIS, number 2 in ISIS being killed, but we ran out of time. Colonel Peters,
you built a wall of words.
Thank you very much, Colonel Peters. Directly ahead, a new Fox poll has some very good news for the Trump campaign, what it means for the final sprint to Election Day in a moment.
Go for 16 years and counting.
Thanks for staying with us. I'm Eric Bowling in for Bill O'Reilly. And in the election 2016 segment tonight, a dead heat in the presidential race. A new Fox poll asks registered voters who they favor on Election Day. Hillary Clinton comes in at 41%. Donald Trump is just 2 points behind at 39% and within the margin of error. Libertarian Gary Johnson is at 9%. Green Party nominee Jill Stein is at 4%. Joining us now to analyze from Boston, Chris Anderson, a Democratic pollster for Fox News, and from Washington, David Morris, Deputy Managing Editor of the Kiplinger Letter. David, we'll start with you. Polls tightening. 2 points, well within the margin of error, and also the swing states seem to be tightening as well. Anyone's race right now?
Well, it is anyone's race. I think anyone who thought the race was over before was just doing some wishful thinking. But you know what? It's just one poll, and it's just one day. It's a good day for Trump today, but it's just one poll, and we'll see what happens next week and the week after that and the week after that.
And Chris, David points out the week after that, which happens to be the first debate. Now, it puts a lot of emphasis on these debates, does it not, with such a tight polls?
Yeah, it absolutely does. I want to point out on the horse race tightening, Clinton is being hurt more by the third-party candidates than Trump. When we do a two-way, she has a 6-point lead. That is down from 10 points earlier. But what's happening is there are some younger voters, some Hispanic voters, who seem to tentatively be going to third-party candidates. Half of them say they might change their mind compared to just 1 in 10 Clinton and Trump voters. So we'll see what they do. Do they get serious and stick with these third-party candidates, or do they gravitate back to the major party candidates, in which case that would help Clinton? Mm-hmm. Big question is if the third-party candidates make the debates you're referring to.
And the reason why
that's a game changer.
The reason why that's important is Johnson at 9% only. He has to get to 15%. Jill Stein at 4%. So the combined total, David, is that there's 13% up for grabs if they don't make the debate stage. And now it looks like it will go to Trump if they don't.
Well, I'm not sure about that. I look at it not only as the 13, 9 for Johnson, 4 for Ms. Stein, but I look at the 7 points, I guess it is, people who haven't picked one or the other or either of the two minor candidates. There's 20 points in play. I think they don't go for Trump necessarily because they seem to have been, in the two-way, they seem to have gone for Clinton more than for Trump. So I think it's still a wide-open race with 20 points in play, and the debate is going to be crucial. There's no doubt about that. I don't think that the second-party, third-party candidates will make it. It's too big a climb to get to 15 now.
Chris, can you help me out here? So a couple of these tracking polls, these daily tracking polls, have Donald Trump with at some point, I think the LA Times tracking poll has him up by 5 points. Why is that so vastly different than the telephone polls, the moment in time polls?
Without talking about a specific poll, I don't want to speculate. I can say that our Fox News poll is use the gold standard methodology, live interviewers, calling cell phones. So I can't speak to other polls. I do want to address, this idea that this poll is really good news for Trump. I still think there are some underlying dynamics that really are in Clinton's favor. We knew this election wasn't going to be won by likability. We've known that for a while. But there are some candidate qualities that really overwhelmingly still favor Clinton, specifically on temperament. In our last poll, 2/3 of voters said they think Clinton has the temperament to be president. 2/3 said Donald Trump does not. 2/3 said they thought Clinton had the right knowledge and capabilities to be president. 2/3 said Trump did not. Until those numbers start to come into line, I still think, yes, maybe the ballot test is giving the appearance that this race is tightening. It's certainly in play, but there's still some fundamentals that really.
I only have about a minute, so I'm going to give each guys you a chance to respond. But very quickly, tell me about this undercover Trump vote that Kellyanne Conway has talked about, where people don't say they'll vote for Trump because they're embarrassed or whatever, and then go ahead really are going to vote for Trump. To start with you, David.
Well, it's a great story, but I don't see anything in polling data, past, present, at all that supports it. I think it's wishful thinking.
Now, what about you, Chris? Is that potentially there?
Yeah, it's completely wishful thinking. We've seen exactly the opposite. We talked to our interviewers at our phone bank, and they tell us that when they get Trump support on the phone, they're louder, they're more enthusiastic. We're not seeing anything like that.
Very good, gentlemen. Thank you very much. When we come right back, Hillary Clinton releasing a tough ad against Donald Trump's illegal immigration rhetoric, but her own policies, nothing more than de facto amnesty. Right back with that. Going after Donald Trump's visit with Mexican President Peña Nieto earlier today.
And it certainly takes more than trying to make up for a year of insults and insinuations by dropping in on our neighbors for a few hours and then flying home again. That is not how it works.
Mrs. Clinton is spending plenty of energy going after Trump, but do her own proposals do anything to actually solve the immigration crisis? Joining us now with reaction from Washington, Rick Grinnell, former U.S. spokesman at the UN and a Fox News contributor, along with David Goodfriend, an attorney and surrogate for the Clinton campaign. David, I got to think, I see a little sweat on your brow there. You're a little worried because that was pretty presidential by Donald Trump, was it not?
Well, it was a very presidential image of having Donald Trump stand next to a foreign leader in the foreign leader's country at a podium. And I think Donald Trump is the master of stagecraft. He was able to have all of us all day today talking about his visit to Mexico. But here's what I found really interesting. The substance of his comments were very telling to me. He was, in effect, saying to the Mexican people, we're in this together. You have to protect your borders to the south, as do we. We want to preserve jobs in the Americas, in the Western Hemisphere. This was very conciliatory language, which really flies in the face of him calling Mexicans rapists and murderers, or calling the Mexican-American judge unfit to serve. That's going to be the hard part for Donald Trump, is reconciling what appears to be an effort right now to soften his approach and still maintain enthusiasm on his base. He got a lot of anger from his supporters when it looked like he was softening his position.
Rick, well, let's talk a little bit about Hillary Clinton's immigration proposal. Is it, in fact, de facto amnesty? And when you let 11 million people stay here and find some way for citizenship, aren't those 11 million Democrat votes waiting to be had?
Well, let's hope not, because I don't think that you can guarantee them citizenship or at least say that they get to vote for the rest of their life. Look, Hillary Clinton mocks enforcing the law. She mocks border security. She mocks this assault on sanctuary cities. I hate this name, sanctuary cities, because really what it is the Democrats' labeling of telling law enforcement officials in certain cities to ignore the law. We saw how disastrous that was in Brussels. We saw that when law enforcement officials are not allowed to enforce the law and you somehow make the entire area kind of fearful of law enforcement officials, what that leads to. So I think that when Hillary Clinton embraces sanctuary cities, when she embraces the fact that there shouldn't be any serious border security, she's on the wrong side. I think Americans absolutely want to see these policies implemented, and Trump is on the right side.
Real quick? Yeah, please do, because I think the polling proves out what Rick is suggesting.
So when Eric, when you ask about amnesty, it was Ronald Reagan who really did real amnesty. As president and also as governor of California, he took real actions to, in effect, pardon and allow people who had arrived in the country illegally to stay here. That's very, very different than saying somebody has to earn citizenship by working.
Let's stay on Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. That was 36 years ago. Let's talk about what's going on right now.
Well, Hillary Clinton is in effect saying, okay, but my point is, Hillary Clinton is to the right of Ronald Reagan on this. She's saying you have to be able to earn your way. Hold on a second, Rick. I'll let you talk. Let me finish here. Hillary Clinton is saying we need a pathway to citizenship, much like the Republicans and Democrats in the Senate and the Gang of Eight said.
What's the difference? I'm going to give Rick a chance to respond to this. What's the difference between amnesty and a path to citizenship? Frankly, I don't get it. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, look, there's not a huge difference here. The fact of the matter is that Hillary Clinton, she just ran this commercial that literally mocks Donald Trump for enforcing the law. That's just the fact. She's not talking about her policies. She's mocking those that want to enforce the laws that we have on the books. And by the way, the commercial, I think, is a total waste of money. It's not effective. It clearly was focus groups and consultant to death. But with the average American, they don't even understand what all those images are.
Right.
So
I know.
I think it's
it was a little weird with all that ink thing going on. Guys, I got to leave right there. I'm up against the break. David, Rick, thank you very much. Up ahead, hide the children. Geraldo Rivera joins us with his predictions on Donald Trump's immigration speech set to start moments from now. Don't go away.
Investor.
In the back of the book segment tonight, the guest I've been resting my voice for all day, Geraldo Rivera, joins us with his take on what Donald Trump should say tonight and his prediction on what Donald Trump will say tonight in his speech. Geraldo is the author of 2 books on immigration and the impact Hispanics are having on the United States. So, Geraldo, let's start with what you think he should say tonight.
Well, may I first say that it was a lot better day for Donald Trump than it was for Enrique Peña Nieto, the president of Mexico. I think Donald Trump really walked all over him in a very respectful way. I think that Trump was presidential. He was measured in his tone. He did not back down. I mean, there's a bit of a flap over whether the president of Mexico and he discussed who is going to pay for the wall.
Why was it bad for Peña Nieto?
Because
so it sounded like they both got along famously.
6 weeks ago, he was comparing Donald Trump to Hitler and Mussolini.
So that's good. He softened his stance on the guy. That's good.
Listen, all I can tell you is Mexican media is chopping up the Mexican president right now. They are saying that he
Jorge Ramos
for Trump. It's not just Jorge Ramos.
Are you sure you represent all Mexican
media? Generally speaking, I guarantee you, this guy was at 20% approval before Trump's visit. Now I think he's going to be in single digits. Now, as to tonight, I thought that Donald Trump's tone was magnificent. This was a brilliant day for Trump. And if his new team is responsible for this smart, ballsy trip, if I may say so, to Mexico, then congratulations to them. I think that it really came off well.
What does he do? What does he do?
He has to maintain the same tone. What did he mention? The border fence? Yep. Sure. Every country has a right to be sovereign. Renegotiating NAFTA, breaking up the drug cartels, manufacturing, keep it in the Western Hemisphere, all great. What he did not mention was a deportation force or rounding up 11 million undocumented.
Should he tonight?
Absolutely not. If he mentions it, he should say it in the same way that he has been in the last 2 days. We're going after the felons, the vicious, the murderers, the robbers, the people really hurting Americans. But the families, Juan and Maria and their children, particularly the citizen children, will be very, very low in terms of the priority of law enforcement. And, let's kind of a kumbaya. Let's get together, build the wall. Renegotiate NAFTA, and the people who have been here, if they've obeyed our laws...
Now, you know Donald Trump, so he should. What will he do? Will he be able to hold back?
If he can taste his own success today, then he will listen to me.
Prompter or off prompter? What does he do? What do you
Definitely on the prompter.
Definitely
on the prompter. Stay on message. Keep that same tone he had today. He was up there. He looked like a leader. They gave him absolute parity with the national leader of the Republic of Mexico, a country of 130 million odd souls. I think that he did a great job. Let him continue in that manner. The worst thing he could do is to be strident, to be nationalistic in a way that offends Mexicans.
How does this day end for Donald Trump? So he's polling around 20% with Hispanics, right? Or so ballpark.
But it's interesting.
Does he go up from there? How can he not?
Native-born American Hispanics and native-born whites basically see him the same. that's the same. It's the immigrants and the recent arrivals, or the Spanish-dominant part of the Latino population, that really has a very, very negative view of him. I don't think that this meaningfully changes their opinion of Donald Trump.
Does this change the undecided, even if they're not Hispanic?
Maybe.
The undecided white vote, women's vote.
The college-educated women's vote might be affected if he keeps to this stuff. Remember, you're going to vote for him no matter what. If he wants my wife to even consider voting for him, then he has to be measured, compassionate, pragmatic, open-minded, inclusive.
Did he accomplish that today so far?
He was great in Mexico City.
So take what he did in Mexico City
take that away from him.
And duplicate that tonight in Phoenix,
do exactly my advice, Donald. If you're listening, you should have listened to me a year ago. My advice is keep it.
We're going to come back at 11 after the speech, and it's going to be a report card. Geraldo's going to get graded at 11 o'clock tonight.
I'll be here.
So make sure you check that out, Geraldo. Thank you very much. That's all we have time for now. But the factor, again, we'll be back live at 11 p.m. Eastern tonight with a reaction to Donald Trump's immigration address. Until then, we'll all be pounding Red Bulls in the green room. I'm Eric Bolling in for Bill O'Reilly. Please remember, the spin stops right here because we're looking out for you.